bill by the Kenyan government. Nancy Okware, Channel 1 News.
Elsewhere, the National Assembly Public Investment Committee has summoned Jubilee Vice Chair David Murathe and 3 other signatories of K-League Limited, a company said to have been awarded 4 billion shillings contract in the recent Kenya Medical Supplies Agency scandal. The members of parliament says affidavits sent to them by 3 signatories have left the committee with questions as to why directors would resign days after getting the lucrative contract and now want the 4 to appear before 8 on Thursday next week.
After taking National Assembly Committee on Public Investment in rounds for months, the 3 signatories of K-League firm, who had been summoned to shed more light on their involvement in the 4 billion shillings KEMSA scandal, failed to show up. Instead, the signatories opting to send affidavits to the committee.
Mr. Wilbert Gachoka here has indicated that it was agreed amongst themselves, again due to the standing of Mr. Murathe, that Mr. Murathe becomes a signatory into that particular account.
It is, however, the declaration that some resigned from the company days after securing the contract that left committee members with more questions than answers.
Mr. Murathe, in his own sworn affidavit, indicates that he knows the directors of K-League. He indicates that he also knows the director of Entech Technology Limited, Mr. Chen Chao. What has not been supplied to us is the finance module agreement that was between Entech and equally K-League. It is not in front of us. We also do not know the agreement that was signed between the 3 parties. One thing that this company has failed to show is whether they actually justified, they fought back or they wrote back to KEMSA, or was it a phone call that made that revival back again?
Some signatories, among them are finance-based financial, in their affidavits claim Jubilee Vice Chair David Murathe played an influential part in having the company paid for supplying 450,000 personal protective equipment.
It would seem, therefore, that David Murathe was brought for guaranteeing the process. And because he is a senior, respected, reputable Kenyan, to influence the process. And he himself says that I was there just to make sure that the payment is done. His role, why he was made a signatory to that account, was to make sure that this thing was paid. It can only mean that his role was to influence. And because he's been described as a respected Kenyan, this is why we need him. Because Kenyans want to see this big fish who influenced the payment in KEMSA.
And a commitment letter has been written in regards to the 4 billion shillings. There was no no consideration of whether there was a budget involvement.
But it would be good, as you know, Chair, that this individual has to appear before this committee. And the committee has the powers of the High Court. And we must ensure that he comes here. We actually interrogate him and we really put issues as required.
The committee now wants the 4 to appear before it physically next Thursday, before it tables its final report when the House resumes from recess in May. For Channel 1 News, I'm Gladys Mongai.
And Kenya has recorded 20 coronavirus-related deaths and 904 new cases in the last 24 hours. The new cases are from 5,673 samples tested in the last 24 hours, indicating the positivity rate of 15.9%.
Out of the 5,673 positive cases, 885 are Kenyans, while 19 are foreigners. 519 are males and 385 are females. The youngest is a 2-month-old infant, while the oldest is 97 years old. Total confirmed positive cases are now 154,392, and accumulative tests so far conducted are 1,624,663. Nairobi County registered the highest number of COVID-19 cases with 288, followed by Mombasa 88, Meru 54, Nakuru 32, Kakamega and Busia 31 cases each, Uasin Gishu and Nyamira 29 cases each, among others. 88 patients have recovered and discharged, 76 from various health facilities countrywide, while 12 are from home-based and isolation care. Unfortunately, 20 deaths have been reported in the last 24 hours, pushing cumulative fatalities to 2,560. A total of 1,507 patients are currently admitted in various health facilities countrywide, while 6,334 patients are on home-based isolation and care. In the meantime, Machakos Governor Dr. Alfred Mutua has called on Kenyans to observe regulations on curfew for the country to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. Mutua, who received donation from partners to augment the county government's effort to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, said the virus is spreading in the country at an alarming rate.
But don't go and conglomerate with other people. Unapata hapo unaletea bibi yako, unaletea bwana yako, unaletea baba yako, wanakufa kwa sababu ya tamaa yako na kukosa nidhamu. It's very serious. We are quite overstretched right now as counties. Here, people are gasping for air. Gasping for air. They are drowning and dying because of lack of oxygen, because of a disease, and mainly because of people really not respecting the regulations.
While Mombasa Governor Hassan Joho has reaffirmed the county's readiness in combating the spiking cases of COVID-19 following the recent third wave attack rate, Joho has expressed concern over the carefree attitude of the locals who continue to flaunt the health protocols in place.
The entire month, the figures we had, we are at that figure today. Yesterday. So 10 days to end of month. So meaning we're going to surpass the figures we had for last month. That should tell you there's a worrying trajectory that must be looked into. No two ways, no rocket science, no magic about it. It's very simple. Wear your mask, sanitize or wash your hands, and observe social distancing, and follow to the latter the protocols that are given to you by the Department of Health, both at national level and county government.
Beatrice Gatonyangetich, Channel 1 News.
And President Uhuru Kenyatta has concluded his 2-day visit to the Democratic Republic of Congo, with the two countries seeking to further relations in trade and security. President Kenyatta and his host, Felix Tshisekedi, witnessed the signing of 3 bilateral agreements that will largely seen as increase in volumes of trade between the two countries.
The volume of trade between Kenya and Congo largely favors Kenya, with the two presidents pledging to scale up the existing bilateral relations between the two countries. The two oversaw the signing of 4 bilateral instruments of cooperation seeking to increase the volume of trade, particularly in the blue economy. To this extent, Kenyatta and Tshisekedi undertook to conclude an MOU on immigration to harmonize the visa regime with the aim of encouraging free movement of people, goods and services. And with terrorism and extremism threatening peace and stability in the region, Kenya and Congo agreed to cooperate in ending the two vices, as well as enlisting other regional bodies in the efforts. Kenya seeks to tap from Tshisekedi's leadership at the African Union to expand economic and the continental agenda.
The decision to discipline a group of rugby players for doping came to haunt the Dean of Law at Daystar University, Professor Dr. Moni Wekesa, as he sought to be the country Chief Justice. Professor Wekesa, who appeared before the Judicial Service Commission, however, defended the decision, which was later overturned by Nicholson report, saying it was guided by research and evidence of the time.
Boasting of over 15 years in physical education and 16 years in legal practice, Professor Moni Wekesa will be bound to explain the 2 doctorate initials in his name.
And I noticed that you use double doctors, so you call yourself Professor Dr. Moni Wekesa. Is that more of a German tradition, or is it your preference?
In Central Europe, the culture is totally different. You write Professor Doctor. If you have 2 doctorates, Professor Doctor. If you have 3, the same thing.
During the interview in search for the next Chief Justice, his previous engagement in the creation of the Anti-Doping Agency and Anti-Doping Act, as well as being part of the committee that saw rugby players put under disciplinary but later overturned, will come to confront him.
The World Now organization, when it came later and did now, very comprehensive, the World Rugby Anti-Doping Advisory Committee member, Mr. Gregor Nicholson, came, took 2 years, did a thorough job, and it was found that you are actually wrong, you know.
The other coaches came and also gave their narrations about the goings-on in the sport of rugby. They are all documented per date and per name. Having received, when the results came from the lab, and this was a University of Nairobi specialized drug analysis laboratory. It marked that all the samples that we had put in had tested positive. I think it's also good to point out that at paragraph 16.24 of the Nicholson report, they say that yes, the task force relied on the results of the Daru lab.
Professor Wekesa is of the view that each judge in a bench should write their own ruling as opposed to the current collective judgment.
And without any fear of contradiction, I want to say it here and now, that each judge will write their own judgment.
He emphasized the need to engage learning institutions and use the current moot courts to expedite and administration of justice. The interviews come down on Friday with Miss Alice Yano. For Channel 1 News, I'm Sarafina Robbie.
The restoration of Ngong River is set to begin under the Nairobi City Regeneration Program. The Ministry of Water has identified a community-based organization, Mazingira Yetu, to undertake the 8-kilometer cleanup exercise in the Kibera informal settlement area.
Kibera Informal Settlements interventions in collaboration with Mazingira Yetu entails construction of 19 ablution blocks, rehabilitation of manholes, extension of sewer line to Jamhuri Showground, and laying of 18 kilometers of water supply lines to provide water for the ablution blocks. Speaking while handing over equipment to Mazingira Yetu CBO, Water Cabinet Secretary Cecily Kariuki said 75% of the project was complete and set to benefit more than 40,000 residents of Kibera.
And we did, as a ministry through the Waterworks, get into a partnership with Mazingira CBO to be able to support them and to draw synergy in terms of getting these young people who live in Kibera, that every day they wake up, they clean the river, they collect the solid waste, but they also ensure the ablution blocks that we have supported in constructing in Kibera are kept clean and in a condition to be utilized, and they are manning that.
The Nairobi Regeneration Program has so far seen the construction of over 35 kilometers of sewer and blocking of 10 kilometers of sewer, reduction of river pollution through construction of over 7 river crossings across Nairobi, Ngong, Mathare, Ruaraka and Kifarage rivers.
Kama sisi wa mama tusikae tu, kuna kazi ziko hapa nje. Sasa sana sisi wa mama usafi tunaweza maintain, si lazima kwa nyumba, unaweza maintain hata usafi nje.
Shirika letu la Mazingira Organization linafanya kazi na vijana 200 kuanzia kijiji cha Kianda hadi kule Undugu East upande wa Lang'ata. Na shughuli yetu haswa imekuwa usafishaji wa mto, kutoa taka kwenye mto, kwenye mitaro, na pia kufanya kazi na serikali katika shughuli za ujenzi wa choo.
The government is targeting to lay over 400 kilometers of sewers in the next 5 years to raise the sanitation coverage. Kevin Washira, Channel 1 News.
Now on to some sad news where over 5,000 cases of gender-based violence were recorded between January and December 2020, a 36% increase of cases recorded within a similar period in 2019. While emphasizing efforts put in place by the government to eradicate the menace, Public Service and Gender Cabinet Secretary Professor Margaret Corbie called for collaborative efforts in winning the war against gender-based violence, which has escalated in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Since the onset of the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, cases of gender-based violence have been in the increase. Locally, the country has had its fair share with unfortunate news of brutal killings in families characterizing the day's headlines. Public Service and Gender Cabinet Secretary Margaret Corbie has raised concern on the looming situation.
About 90% of the cases reported are from women, but about 10% is also from men. The gains we are making, socioeconomic gains we are making as a country, are going to be counterproductive if gender-based violence continues to thrive in Kenya.
According to Professor Corbie, between January and December 2020, a total of 5,009 cases of gender-based violence were recorded through the National Gender-Based Violence Toll-Free Helpline 1195, a 36% increase from the cases recorded within the same period in 2019.
The number of GBV cases recorded between January and June 2020 had increased by 92%. compared with the previous year, 2019.
Nairobi, Kakamega, Kisumu, Nakuru and Kiambu counties reported the highest cases of gender-based violence. The findings of a study done by the National Crime Research Center highlighted alcohol, drug and substance abuse, poverty, domestic disputes and retrogressive cultural practices as among the leading causes of GBV. The most common forms of GBV were reported to be physical assault, rape, murder, sexual offences, child marriage, psychological torture, as well as child neglect.
I wish to appeal to all members of the public to join hands to end the vice before it becomes a normal way of living and violating human rights. Stand against gender-based violence by, among other things, reporting the incidences, supporting the victims, speaking out against harmful retrogressive cultural beliefs wherever you are.
But at the end of the day, it's us, men, young men, that need to take care of our women, our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, not vent on them and create all this violence.
The ministry encourages the public to utilize toll-free hotlines which include the National GBV Helpline 1195, National Police Helpline 0800730999, and Child Helpline 116 to report cases of gender-based violence and get assistance. Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Jackie Wambiru.
Well, you're watching us live from Broadcasting House. We are live on YouTube, of course, and on Twitter. My name is O'Brien Ikimani, and at KBC Channel 1. We're taking a short break, and thereafter we'll be back, and I'll be telling you why 14,000 inmates are free at last. Stay right here.
Je, umeomoka? Kama hujaomoka kwenye Quickly ndio mambo yote. Hapa tuko na fridge, kodi yake ni CM. Tuko na gas cooker, kodi yake ni CK. Tuko na TV, kodi yake ni TV. Tuko na simu aina ya Samsung ni SM, ama Oppo ni Oppo. My friend, mahali popote unanitizama, eka hizo kodi zake kisha utume kwa 4032353. 4032353. Alafu utakuwa unaomoka na hizi bidhaa. Kumbuka, kwenye Quickly ni la bora zaidi kwa bei ya chini kwa chini.
Next on matumizi mabaya ya ofisi, hasa zaidi ofisi za umma.
Na vile vitu vya mtoto vile vya akijisaidia zile pampers vile. Pampers. Nichukulie. Kera soko isijui kwa wapi. Yeye mtu kujata mkia mama kiti kwa wapi? Hizi bila kiti kwa wapi? Na leo jaipitia.
Anawacha kazi ya kupeleka file, anatumwa supermarket.
Yaani this. Hizi ndio zinaharibu jina ya kampuni. This is what you call design. Kwa takataka kwa hapo. Yote ndani tunaelewa kwa ndio kwa ngoni kwa ngara kabisa. Sasa boss sekangu ni tarakilishi.
Huo ni ungwana kweli.
The Ministry of Energy is working on a framework that will allow consumers to make direct electricity purchase from power producers. Speaking at the 68th KenGen AGM, Energy Principal Secretary Joseph Njoroge said regulations to operationalize the open access policy that seeks to pave way for a direct power sales are at an advanced stage.
Kenyans could soon be able to purchase electricity directly from producers. Currently, Kenya Power has the monopoly on power sales, but the Energy Act, assented by the President in 2019, provides for the opening up of the sector. Speaking at the 68th KenGen AGM held virtually, Energy Principal Secretary Joseph Njoroge said draft regulations to operationalize the open access policy are at an advanced stage.
Even as we work on the issue of direct sales of electricity from generator to the users, we must also take cognizance of the various obligations that Kenya Power and Lighting has on the payments to KenGen and other independent power producers, because they do have signed contracts in form of what we call the power purchase agreements.
Electricity generator KenGen, alongside other independent power producers, have until now been restricted to power generation, with Kenya Power retailing the electricity to the end user. Njoroge says that the government is working on various interventions to resolve the financial crisis at Kenya Power that owes KenGen 24 billion shillings for electricity supplies.
Some of the interventions that have already been implemented, like delaying of payment obligations on what we call on-lent loans by Treasury, to give some relief to Kenya Power, and very many others, which even involve addressing some internal efficiencies, enhancement.
He says conversion of the debt to equity will be their last option. As part of the revenue diversification, KenGen is undertaking geothermal drilling contracts in Ethiopia, Djibouti and Rwanda.
But there are also other activities that are not necessarily drilling services. We will offer consultancies, geoscientific studies. We are also looking at other opportunities like manufacturing our own drilling detergent.
During the AGM, KenGen shareholders approved a final dividend payout of 30 cents per ordinary share.
Kenya Airways has signed an agreement with the Congo Airways that will see the two national carriers partner in areas of mutual interest, including sharing of excess capacity. The 2-year agreement includes route and code-sharing provision aimed at expanding routes for the national carriers across the continent and globe.
Kenya Airways and the Congo Airways plan to increase their regional presence through a joint venture. An agreement signed between the two national carriers during the tail end of President Uhuru Kenyatta's 3-day visit to DRC Congo. The two carriers will partner in areas of mutual agreement. Part of the agreement will see the two airlines share excess capacity. This provision will allow passengers on a Congo Airways flight to transit to their final international destination via Kenya Airways. The 2-year agreement will also include route and code sharing provision aimed at expanding the carrier's domestic, African, and international networks. The development comes in the wake of Congo Airways' expansion strategy that has seen the DRC national carrier acquire new aircraft. Congo Airways is also seeking to leverage on KQ's presence in more than 60 destinations in Africa, North America, Europe, and the Middle East to increase its global presence. KQ, on the other hand, is seeking to increase its presence in the mineral-rich nation, following a void left by the South African Airways. In its post-COVID-19 recovery strategy, Kenya Airways had removed the Republic of Congo and 7 other regional destinations, including Somalia and Sudan, from its route. In a signing agreement that was witnessed by President Uhuru Kenyatta and his DRC counterpart, Felix Tshisekedi, the two national carriers will also share information and expertise in aircraft maintenance and aviation training. Benson Rioba reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Young women have been urged to embrace science, technology, engineering and mathematics in order to guarantee future jobs that are increasingly shifting towards the digital path. According to ICT Innovation and Youth Affairs CAA's Maureen Mbaka, most girls shy away from fields involving science, technology, engineering and mathematics as their male counterparts continue to dominate and thrive.
In Kenya, participation in science, technology, engineering and mathematics shows and exhibitions indicate a clear gender disparity of about 35%.
There are wrong perceptions that this space is only for, it's not meant for women, So just breaking down this bias and having even those who are in the sector, not speaking of, oh, this is only a male-dominated area, females can't thrive in this area. So once you break down these barriers, then young women and girls will see that this is an avenue, a career that they can actually get into.
Fewer females participate and even fewer are involved in competitions involving such courses. Speaking during a virtual webinar, ICT Innovation and Youth Affairs CAS Maureen Mbaka urged girls and young women to make use of the available resources to advance their skills and knowledge in science, technology, engineering and mathematics fields to create and tap opportunities in the technology space.
As well as, once you've gotten the skills, you can be able to attend these centers and actually use the devices to work online. So I would urge all young people, young girls across the country, do take advantage of the offerings of the Ajira program. Find out which is the nearest Ajira Youth Empowerment Center to you, and you'll be able to access these devices. And this information is available on the website ajiradigital.go.ke under resources.
The ICT Ministry is running over 300 initiatives, including the Ajira Digital Program, the Constituency Innovation Hubs, as well as youth empowerment centers, with the aim of increasing opportunities in the digital space. ICT experts believe there would be more opportunities in the tech space.
Our young workforce, we should be aware of the changing nature of work, of the future of work. At the moment, especially with the pandemic, this has been accelerated. Now you have to be, very not tech savvy, but you need to learn at least the basics of how to work with computers. You need to be able to work remotely and to deliver on short-term work commitments.
This emerged during the commemoration of the International Girls in ICT Day held every fourth Thursday of April globally. This year's event was commemorated virtually. Since the year 2011, more than 377,000 girls and young women have participated in these celebrations. Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
And traders in Kajiado claim the high prices of tomatoes is as a result of a standoff between Kenya and Tanzania over maize imports. Tomato traders say imposition of strict measures on maize imports from neighboring countries of a high level of aflatoxin have seen Tanzania counterparts withholding tomatoes, which has seen the price of the produce in Kenya shoot up.
Last month, Kenya lifted a blanket ban on maize imports from Uganda and Tanzania and imposed strict conditions on exporters in a move aimed at curbing shipping in of aflatoxin-infected produce. However, the directive has ruffled feathers, with tomato traders from the neighboring country holding the commodity in protest. A 60-kilogram crate of tomatoes is retailing at about 9,000 shillings, up from the previous low of 3,000 shillings. Elsewhere, traders in Eldoret are urging the Uasin Gishu County government to allow them operate on a 24-hour basis. This follows the refurbishment of the main wholesale market.
Nimeanza hapa biashara from 1998 mpaka saa hii kuna mabadiliko. Soko ni safi, tunaweza fanya kazi hata 24 hours, lakini bado tujaruhusiwa kufanya kazi hiyo 24 hours, but soko yetu ni safi.
They argue that with COVID-19 disruptions, traders need a longer period to transact business. Finally, listed agricultural firm Kakuzi has announced a free fruit maturity testing service for smallholder avocado farmers for the current harvest period. As part of the firm's outgrower development programs, Kakuzi will provide free maturity testing services during the current harvest period that runs to August this year. The service will ensure compliance with quality standards and enhance the value of Kenyan fruits in the global market. The Kakuzi Avocado Smallholder Program focuses on the economic empowerment of smallholder avocado farmers through sharing skills and knowledge on avocado growing and overall good agricultural practices. The testing service also targets to help boost the national branding objectives geared at positioning Kenya as a quality avocado fruit source market. Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Well, private investors have been urged to optimize on the opportunities availed by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to increase regional trade. Speaking during the official inauguration of the rebranded Equity BCDC office block in Kinshasa, Congo, President Uhuru Kenyatta said there is need for more investment in the regional supply chain that has been adversely affected by COVID-19 pandemic.
Africa Continental Free Trade Area came into force in January 1st this year, with 30 countries having ratified the treaty. President Uhuru Kenyatta is calling for more private equity in the continent's supply chain to strengthen intercontinental trade. Speaking during the official inauguration of the rebranded Equity BCDC office block in central Kinshasa, President Kenyatta said the supply chain has been disrupted by COVID-19 pandemic and there's need for private investment to strengthen regional business ties.
Today is a clear reminder and testimony of intra-Africa trade and cooperation. And on my part, I reaffirm the commitment of my administration to drive closer economic and social relations in both the region and across the continent.
Local private businesses have been encouraged to consider regional markets in their expansion strategy.
Note with pride that with the merger of these two institutions, Equity BCDC becomes the second largest commercial bank in the Democratic Republic of Congo and among the leading joint financial investment entities in our region.
He backed mergers and acquisitions as playing a key role in fostering regional integration.
I believe it is a moment of rare regional and continental pride as we witness our local enterprises coming together in the spirit of one Africa, one people.
We promise that as we come to DLC, we will carry out our activities as we have done in Kenya. And in so doing, we will strengthen the strong bonds between our two countries.
Equity Bank Commercial du Congo has a balance sheet of over 320 billion Kenyan shillings and over 1 million customer base. Benson Rioba reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Well, elsewhere, the Kenya Meat Commission officials have undertaken a public participation and sensitization campaign in Mandera County in the meat processors' plans to boost production. led by KMC Procurement Officer Lieutenant Colonel Martin Moluke. The team said they were sensitizing pastoralists and livestock traders on the meat processors' procurement processes, as well as familiarizing themselves with challenges farmers are facing.
The Kenya Meat Commission has a slaughter capacity of 1,250 large animals daily and 2,000 small stocks. However, the meat processor has been operating below capacity and is said to be grappling with unreliable supply of livestock as well as a worn-out processing plant. This has affected operations.
We are targeting to slaughter 4,000 cows per month. That translates to almost 200 animals per day. And our purpose of coming today to Mandera was to sensitize the farmers and tell them about how livestock can be procured.
This has prompted officials to launch an outreach program targeting herders and traders who are calling on the meat processor to buy livestock based on the carcass weight as opposed to the weight of the livestock.
Currently, KMC is handling procuring animals by use of live weight, as opposed to what used to be happening, that is procuring them on carcass weight. After they have been slaughtered, that's when they were being weighed and given the measurements to the farmer.
Meanwhile, Pride In Group is calling on the government to consider deferring some taxes and waive some levies for the hospitality industry to save the businesses.
We really urge the government, let us save these jobs, these 2 million jobs. Allow international and domestic traveling to continue with either a negative PCR certificate or a negative rapid antigen certificate. Allow restaurants to continue operating as long as those health and safety COVID measures have been put into place. Allow meetings and conferences to go on. We have to save these jobs.
Pride In Group Managing Director Hasnain Nurani argues that strategies put in place to flatten the COVID-19 curve, such as restrictive movement, curfew and closure of restaurants and hotel establishments, have significantly affected livelihoods of over 2 million hotel and travel industry workers. Finally, NCBA Bank Kenya has sealed a deal with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers to enhance the development of SMEs in the manufacturing sector.
Any bank can offer any customer a loan, okay? But it is when a bank partners with a corporate or an SME to start to build their capacity for growth and broaden their knowledge and deepen their appreciation of what the opportunities are in the market globally, regionally, that you start to make a real difference.
The 2-year deal will see the lender and CAM support 300 SMEs through capacity building, financing and market access promotion.
And for financial institutions, we are also calling upon you to work with us so that we develop innovative solutions for manufacturing SMEs in the country so that we are able to give them affordable financing solutions.
Regina Manyara reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Well, the Kenya Revenue Authority is encouraging employees to be checking if their employer is remitting deducted tax and tonnage if need to be to avoid penalties associated with non-payment of due taxes. Wanja Wangondu, a supervisor at KRA's Domestic Tax Department, is encouraging taxpayers to keep checking their tax remittance status to detect cases of non-remittance and implement corrective measures. Alan Aoko is our reporter. He spoke to Wanja about tax remittance and other issues you, as a taxpayer, need to know.
Hello and welcome. If you're just joining us, this is Business Insight. My name is Alan Aoko and you're just in time for a very riveting interview. Today, we want to talk matters tax returns, and we want to also find out how it is important to you and to the country. And just to help us expound further into this topic, we have with us Wanja Wangondu, who is from the Domestic Tax Department at the Kenya Revenue Authority. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Indeed. So, of course, viewers are very curious, and if you want to interact with us, of course, you can find us on KBC Channel 1 on all our handles, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, would you believe it? And we begin with starting with, why is filing tax returns still very important to this country at this time?
Okay, thank you.
Now, the filing of the returns is not only important to the government, but you as Alan. It is when you file your returns that you are able to bring together all the incomes for the year, and you are able even to establish if your employer actually did the remission of your taxes, because you're able to see in the system, as well as it helps you know you are at what point even in your business. And then to the taxman, it is an internal control in a way, because what was deducted from you by your employer, you now get an avenue of finding out. So the taxman is able to see that whatever the employers were deducting, if it agrees with whatever the employees are doing the declaration for. Plus, it's the only avenue that the taxman, being we're in a self-assessment regime in our country. So it's the only avenue that the taxman is able to get the full information about your incomes as well.
Of course, these questions come at the back of the deadline that is quickly approaching. This is the time when, Kenyans have it at the back of their mind that they should file their tax returns. But just to get a feel of where we are at this point, how many filed their tax returns by June 30th, 2020, perhaps?
By June 30th last year, yes, we had 4.4 million who had filed.
And is this nil returns? Is it possible to segment the nil and the other segments, or that's cumulative figure?
Yes, that's the cumulative figure. Yes, and maybe in the next meeting I'll be able to give you the breakdown. Yes, but you actually notice most of the Kenyans have incomes. Yes, most of the Kenyans do have incomes.
And that's a growth. Are we looking at a trajectory that is going upwards at this time?
Yes, in fact, the year before, we had 3.6. So the number actually grew from 3.6 to 4.44. So it was such a good growth, and that is on-time filing, the people who had actually filed on time. So there are a few who were a bit late, but I'm highly encouraging all Kenyans to file our returns on time to avoid filing late. In fact, filing starts from 1st of January, and it's still ongoing. I know a few of us may have delayed in filing because there's a document that we need maybe from the insurance to claim the insurance relief, maybe the mortgage document, or maybe there are some accounts that are not yet ready. But I urge all Kenyans, I want to state that for individuals and for partnerships, our year ends in that 1st December. And so what that means, we ought to pay any taxes that we did not pay within the year 2020 on or before the 30th of April. So today's 20th. We have 10 days to ensure we pay that balance of tax. So let us ensure we file on time.
In fact, now that you brought that up, we'll also talk about, of course, the repercussions or the challenges, or rather the penalties of filing late, just for awareness and the sake of our viewers. But I would also like to ask, that trajectory you've said from about 3.6 million to 4-point-something million, what informed this growth? Is it technology, or what kind of advancement did you deploy to improve this undertaking?
There are a number of factors that influence the filing of the returns uptake, and one of them is information. A person who has information is empowered. And that's why the taxman has taken up the ideal of ensuring everybody gets the information. I'm sure you have already received an SMS asking you to file. And if you have not yet received it, this week will not end before you receive one if you have not yet filed. Another thing is, last year, we noted the use of technology increased. By the lockdown aspect, you noted that very many people embraced online, and so even the filing. But then we even noted the number of people who seek support from our offices went down last year look at the increase from 3.6 to 4.4 who filed on time, but the numbers were very low. The numbers were visiting our offices. So it's a clear indication that the step-by-step guide we have put on our website and the simplification of our systems that we have done is helping a big number of people, and the public have highly embraced that. I also wish to note, technologically, we now have a name service app whereby, Alan, you don't need to visit any office. You just need to go to your phone, download the M-Service app, and file all your nail returns there. Would the nail returns be relating to income tax, pay-as-you-earn, value-added tax, rental income? And by the way, for rental income and for turnover tax, since it's quite simplified, you can do everything up to paying on your phone.
Yes. So the new application, which of course Kenya has a very high penetration of the mobile phone, it's something that has now been refined, and therefore one can just download the application, or what are the steps that someone can take to?
You just download the application, and then once you download the application, if you don't have a PIN, you are able to get a PIN as well through the M-Service app. And like in your case, you already have a PIN. All you need to do is you log in with your PIN. Once you put your PIN details, then you just get to the part for the filing, if it's nil. But for persons who have income, I would highly encourage, let's use iTax. Yes, let's use iTax. But for the people who are doing nil returns or the rental income or turnover tax returns, those ones can comfortably use the M-Service app.
Of course, some of us would be curious to know, where does this technological advancement go from here, now that we are drawing lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic and detaching ourselves from a lot of physical contact and, filling your banking halls? Where does this technology advancement go from here?
So now, over the years, we have been working on our systems, and more so, we want to get to a place that every Kenyan is able to file from wherever. And more so, as I've talked about the turnover tax returns and the rental income, initially, you could only use iTax. So we are simplifying our forms. We are also simplifying our systems and everything else because we want a common mwananchi to be able to use our systems with ease. We get very positive reports about persons who are filing for turnover tax and who are filing for rental income. By the way, it will not even take you a minute to do that filing. It's as easy as, do you know your income? How much rental income have you got in the given month? Which month was it? That one the system will populate. Then you just put the amount of rental income that you received. The system computes, you finish filing, and the system computes the tax for you. So that's where we want to get to. In fact, from July this year, we are embarking on a simplification process whereby we simplify our laws, we simplify our systems, we simplify our forms. We basically make everything very simple for our taxpayers. Yes, we are working on it from July this year.
Because also, of course, does this mean you've also cured what others would say traffic? Many Kenyans, the last minute jam on the systems. Your systems are able now to even withstand the kind of traffic that comes with filing returns at the very last minute?
Yes. In fact, for the last 2 years, we have not had any problems on 30th June. So even this year, our servers we are prepared for any numbers that may turn up.
Very robust as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, of course, the purpose of this interview is just to as well bring it down to basics, because, issues to do with taxes, many find it very difficult and the jargon in there is very harsh. Let's start very basic as well. Who exactly are to file these returns on the 30th of June, by the 30th of June? Who is eligible?
Now, all individual persons, all partnerships, and all limited companies whose year end on 31st December are the parties that are required to file the returns by the 30th of June. Notice this. When you get a PIN number, there's an obligation that is added on your PIN. If the obligation that's on your PIN is income tax, then you are the person who is required to file. Yes.
And We also understand that apparently some Kenyans do call in to file their tax returns. They file their annual tax returns and a repetitive exercise on the account that their employers filed the pay as you earn, of course, monthly returns during the year of income. Do they have to now do a repetition, or what's happening there?
Okay. Now notice this. Our employers only know about one source of our income, and that is the income from employment. And by the way, it may not even necessarily be all the income from employment, because your employer will basically know what they pay you. You may have part-time employment, and you may also be having other incomes. You may be having business income. You may be having farming income, rental income, commissions, and any other income that you may be having that's taxable. So the employer just makes a declaration to say that these were my employees in the given month. I paid them this money, I deducted this tax, and this is what I limited. And now, so Alan, you're coming up and then saying, you get the P9 from employment, and then you prepare simple accounts for all your other incomes. And then that's what now you come and do a declaration on, of the employment income plus all the other incomes that you have that are taxable.
So that's why it's important.
Yes.
Okay. Something also that is very pertinent to our viewers, especially at this time of difficulties. Last year we had, of course, some kind of tax relief measures that we had due to the COVID-19 misfortunes. Will we see some kind of relief as we go and file our tax returns that have rolled over due to the effects of the pandemic that we're experiencing right now?
So now, last year, from April, as you can remember, there was such a good move. The people whose income was up to 24,000 in a month, they became exempt from tax. You know, initially, it used to be the persons whose income was up to 13,486. In addition, the list of the taxes were also reduced. And so we enjoyed that benefit last year because with effect from January, it was done away with. And so since we were enjoying the benefit last year, when we will be filing, we'll be able to see that effect. Yes, so the reduction was there, and we actually did enjoy. So at the filing point, since it's something that we already enjoy, we will not enjoy it per se at the filing point, but we enjoyed last year.
So yeah, there's usually a misunderstanding there that if you're filing, maybe they are getting some kind of new rebates, but it is something that has already occurred.
Yes, yes. Filing, you are basically declaring what happened last year. So we enjoyed last year, but now we are filing in relation to that year. Yes.
And the other question that will come to mind now then is, as we bring in all these categories of taxpayers, what exactly is KRA doing? How does it force PIN holders without an income to file a nil return? How does that really work? How do you manage to do this?
Okay. So, Alan, first I would wish to say, by looking at Alan today, am I able to say Alan has an income or Alan does not have an income? No. And also, you will notice there are people that in a given financial year or in a given year of income, they may have an income, and then in the other year, they don't. And so the law recognizes an early return as a return. And so it's now upon you to make the declaration and say that this year, 2019, these were my incomes. 2020, these were my incomes. But maybe years to come, we will get to that point that we will be, our data and our systems, everything will be quite streamlined, and maybe our banking systems and everything else, and we will get to a point where maybe some parties may be exempted from filing. But as it is right now, all of us are required to, even the person who is making an early return, because as I've told you, an early return is recognized by law to be a return as well.
Interesting. So we've talked about the nil return taxpayer. Let's talk a bit about the employed taxpayer. How does an employed person go about perhaps reporting? You know, this is something that has occurred over and over, and we've had people reporting, coming to us and saying, oh, my employer has not been remitting tax, has not been doing this and that with my taxes. How do they go about going about this without even incurring the penalties that might come? Because out of a fault of not of their own, they find that unfortunately the employer was not doing their part in this filing. How do they remedy this?
So, are you in employment? Has the employer given you the P9 document? Then, if you have that P9 document from your employer, and when you are filing, you realize that your employer had not limited the tax, so that the system tells you're supposed to pay any tax, or even in the course of the year, you know, the credits, once your employer pays, that money is credited to your account. So anytime you log in, you're actually able to tell if your employer limits or not. If you notice that your employer is not limiting, then just with your P9, send your P9 to call center at kra.go.ke and state that your employer deducts taxes, but you haven't seen any credit in the system. And then we will be able to get back to you. And if it's an issue to do with the employer has maybe difficulties in filing or something like that, we will be able to offer the support that's needed to your employer. But if we notice it's something else, that your employer is actually evading tax, then we'll be able to take the proper measures on your employer, and no action will be taken on you, because in your case, the employer actually deducted the tax. Yes.
Let me now throw in a spanner in the works, maybe something a bit of a thinker there. We have a lot of SMEs in this country, yes. And we find many of them fail. Some of them are not successful in their endeavors. You find that someone has started a company and they're trying to make it grow. But of course, since they're registered and they're legitimate, of course, they have to pay the tax. But unfortunately, it just so happens that the company doesn't even make any sales in its first year or in the many months it has been open. How will they redeem themselves with KRA if they have not been making any sales and they have not even filed taxes of the first year of the first few months they've been in existence? How do they redeem themselves with KRA? What are the repercussions of this?
Okay. Well, so one of the things I guide our taxpayers on, it's good to know the tax obligation that you're having, because look at it this way. The taxman cannot push you to go and make the money. You get it? Because it's not under your control in getting the business or making the sales and all that. In fact, when you go to open your business every morning, it's by faith that you will have clients and that you'll do big business. So in any case, that the tender you are expecting, the businesses you are expecting, they do not pick as you expected, then you have a way out. The way out is this: ensure you do a proper declaration of the state as it is. Meaning, if there's no sales, do a declaration indicating there were no sales. Then, number two, if you close down a business, then do not stay with an obligation that you don't need. Deregister that obligation. Because I've come across people who closed businesses 5 years ago, but they never deregistered the PIN. So let's deregister if we have closed a business line. But it's an issue to do with our businesses getting low and all that. Let's ensure we adhere to the filing guidelines.
Thank you very much. Of course, this is a conversation that we can't just have in 30 minutes or in one day. It's a conversation that always continues, especially when it comes to complex matters of tax. And we appreciate that you are here to tell us more about it. There you have it. We've been talking about filing your annual tax returns. And I hope you have been enriched. Of course, you can, engage us on this topic, ask your questions on our handles, KBC Channel 1. My name is Alan Aoko. We have been speaking with Wanja Wangondu, who is from the Domestic Domestic Tax Department at the Kenya Revenue Authority. Feel free to interact with us online. And with that, we leave you now. See you next time. Goodbye.
Our reporter there, Alan Aoko, talking to tax experts from Kenya Revenue Authority and trying to find out all the things that you would want to find out about taxation. Let's now head to international news, where a panel of US senators questioned officials from Apple and Google about the dominance of their mobile app stores and whether the companies abuse their power at the expense of smaller competitors. Representatives from Spotify and Match also gave evidence accusing the two firms of charging exorbitant fees and copying their ideas.
App makers like Spotify and dating services firm Match Group, which owns the Tinder app, have for long complained that mandatory revenue sharing for sales of digital goods and strict inclusion rules set by Apple's App Store for iPhones and iPads, along with Google's Play Store for Android devices, amount to anti-competitive behavior. Google and Apple both charge 30% of any digital transaction, raising prices for consumers. The two tech companies say the fees were justified to provide security for users. Meanwhile, oil prices fell for a third day on Thursday as supplies build up in U.S. crude inventories and resurgence of COVID-19 cases in India and Japan raised concerns that a recovery in the global economy and fuel demand may slow. Brent crude futures fell 0.9% to $64.7 a barrel, following a drop of $1.25 on Wednesday. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures was down 1.0% to $60.77 a barrel after losing $1.3 on Wednesday. Both contracts dropped more than 2% on Wednesday, closing at their lowest since April 13th. Prices are down more than 3% so far this week. Finally, Japan's government is expected to issue a third state of emergency on Tokyo and 3 western prefectures that could last for about 2 weeks. Analysts say the decision, expected to be made as early as Friday, may push Japan back into recession if retailers are asked to close during the Golden Week holidays, which starts next week and run through early May. If adopted in all 4 regions that made requests, the emergency measures would cover close to a quarter of Japan's population of 126 million and roughly 30% of gross domestic product. Terry Njenga, Channel 1 Business.
Siri za maisha. Siri ya kwanza ya maisha ni kujifunza kusamehe. Ya pili ni kujituma. Ya tatu ni kujifunza. Ya 4 kukubali mabadiliko. Ya 5 kuweka akiba. 6 kutokufa moyo. Na 7 kumtendea mwenzako jinsi ungependa akutendee wewe.
Ili kupata skiza tune ya siri za maisha, bonyeza *811 *397 hash. Bonyeza *811 *397 hash. Je, umeomoka? Kama hujaomoka kwenye Quickbin ndio mambo yote. Hapa tuko na fridge, kodi yake ni CM. Tuko na gas cooker, kodi yake ni CK. Tuko na TV, kodi yake ni TV. Tuko na simu aina ya Samsung ni SM, ama Oppo ni Oppo. My friend, mahali popote unanitizama, eka hizo kodi zake kisha utume kwa 4032353 4032353, alafu utakuwa unaomoka na hizi bidhaa. Kumbuka, kwenye Quickbin ni bila bora zaidi kwa bei ya chini kwa chini.
Well, time now for sports. Formalities of the past few days are complete, and it's all systems go as ARC Equator Rally's pre-event section gets underway at the designated 5.4 kilometers Laudia stretch tomorrow. The match anticipated qualifying stage will determine the start order on Saturday for the ARC cars, depending on the timing.
KWS Training Institute has been a beehive of activity over the past 2 days, during which national cars and ARC registered entrants were inspected on Wednesday and Thursday respectively. FIA technical delegate Musa Locho has been in charge of scrutineering, where over 30 cars underwent pre-event checks. While team mechanics put their race appliances through a rigorous day-long scrutineering process, drivers were out to familiarize with technicalities of the route.
It's always challenging because, in motorsports, especially FIA, you have new regulations that you have to keep on complying. So it's always a challenging exercise. It's not like business as usual. Every day you expect to do routine. Yes, most of them have complied. Those who have not, we normally give them a window to go and rectify, and they can come back before the start of the event, and they'll be allowed to start.
This is truly an international event that is taking place at a very, very challenging time, and this goes a long way to show that the government of Kenya, through the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Heritage, is capable of hosting international events while observing COVID protocols and while making sure that the people who are involved, all the stakeholders, are safe and secure.
Meanwhile, Saturday's leg of the Equator Rally will feature 3 stages at the expansive Soisambu Conservancy, which will be repeated twice to make up a competitive mileage of 131.96 kilometers, transport road section of 257.292 kilometers, and the day's cumulative total of 389.88 kilometers. Karanja David for Channel 1 Sports.
Well, for the second year running, the annual Lewa Safari Com Marathon will be taking place virtually on the 26th of June due to the coronavirus pandemic. Runners will not register for a fee, but the organizers have encouraged them to join the challenge and donate anything in support of Kenya's communities and wildlife. Runners have been competing in 4 categories: the 5 kilometers, 10, 20 and 21.5 marathon, as well as full 42 kilometers marathon. World marathon record holder Eliud Kipchoge is expected to be part of this year's race. Before the coronavirus pandemic, Duncan Maivu and Emma Kilole won the 2019 edition of the Lewa Marathon, which attracted a total of 1,400 runners. Elsewhere, protest by athletes such as taking a knee will be banned at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. The International Olympic Committee has asked athletes in a survey whether its Rule 50, which bans demonstrations, should change. A total of 3,547 athletes who consulted with 67% wishing to keep the Olympic podium free of protest, and 70% keen to avoid on-field demonstrations. The IOC said sanctions for those who breach the rule will now be considered. Rule 50 of the Olympic Charter aims to stop protest and demonstrations in order to protect the neutrality of sports and Olympic Games. Protests are prohibited on the podium, field of play or at ceremonies. The Tokyo 2020 Olympics are due to begin on 23rd of July, with the Paralympics set to start on 24th of August. Now to EPL, where Leicester City manager Brendan Rodgers says that he expects full-back Ricardo Pereira to overcome a minor calf problem in time to face West Brom in the English Premier League today. The match at the King Power Stadium will be the only Premier League match of the day. Meanwhile, Manchester City are now 8 points away from being crowned Premier League champions this season after coming from a goal down to win 2-1 at Aston Villa.
Step on in 4 seasons.
Well, that's all for now. Thank you very much indeed for watching Inside Government. Well, not Inside Government, but Business Insight. Inside Government is coming up later on in the next 10 or so minutes. From me and the rest of the team, thank you so very much indeed for your time. Remember, tonight we are focusing on Kenya's industrialization agenda on Inside Government. And we are talking to the PS in charge of State Department of Industrialization, Kaberia. Stay right here. Thank you for your time. Have a good night. Bye for now.
Vera Beauty and Fashion College, with branches in Nairobi, Eldoret, Thika, and Meru. Did you know that we are a TVET-approved institution? We offer courses in fashion design, interior design and soft furnishing, event decoration, flower arrangement, event planning, hairdressing, barbering and dreadlocks, beauty therapy, makeup, nail technology, spa massages, teaching skills, TOT, solo business management, and many more. Register now and visit our website on www.verabeautycollege.com. You can also call on 0725-923-550 Nairobi branch, 0728-087-689 Eldoret branch, 0722-227428 Thika branch, 0725-000-706 Meru branch. Vera Beauty and Fashion College, a TVET-approved institution. Jumapili hii kwenye runinga ya KBC, ungana naye Askofu Michael Wanderi wa kanisa la Christian Foundation Fellowship Kiambu kuanzia saa 1 hadi saa 2 asubuhi.
Ningetaka nikwambie, our Jehovah God, because the Bible says he is the same yesterday, today and forevermore. He is able to take you to a place of abundance. He is able to take you to Rehoboth in the name of Jesus Christ.
Kipindi ni neno la neema, ukiletewa naye Askofu Michael Wanderi wa kanisa la Christian Foundation Fellowship Kiambu. Usikose.
Kenya's long-held desire is to become an industrialized nation, and according to Sessional Paper number 10 of 1965, the dream was well set out, but unfortunately, we have always missed this target. The Vision 2030 is a well-defined document that shows how the country can become a newly industrialized nation by the year 2030. Of course, there are a number of things that we need to get right. Well, this week on Inside Government, we're talking to Ambassador Keremi Kaberia. He's the PS, or Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Industrialization. He's now joining us to help us understand what are we doing as a country not to miss the boat by the river come the year 2030. Thank you very much indeed, Balozi, for finding time to be with us here. You know, as I have alluded, I mean, when you study the history of this nation, there has been a long held desire to make this country a manufacturing hub, not just in the region, but in Africa. So many documents have been crafted. Technocrats have been brought on board to help in the realization of this dream. And the question that has eluded for quite a long time is, why have we always missed this opportunity to become an industrialized nation?
Thank you very much, O'Brien. It is a pleasure to see you yet again, and thank you for granting us this opportunity at least to explain from where we've come to where we are. Today, I'll say Kenya is at a very advantageous position. Kenya has done quite well so far, and Kenya is way en route to attaining the Vision 2030 dream. Why do I say this? You know, between 2010 and 2014, a lot happened, and in 2014, Kenya was declared a middle-income country. Since then, Kenya has continued to grow at way over 5.56% every year, including last year when we had COVID. Kenya was among the economies in the region or in Africa, and indeed around the globe, that actually did not tank completely. We look forward to this year being a lot better because the fundamentals are in place. If you ask yourself, what are the benchmarks? What are the standards that we use? What are we actually basing our dream, our Vision 2030 on? There are quite a number of things, and if we can just speak in layman's language, the most important aspects to this is cost of living, standard of living, access to the basics like housing, security, healthcare, education, and the rest. You can name them in a long list. And when you look at all those aspects, Kenya has incrementally improved in almost every single one of those aspects. So to me, I think we have done quite well so far. We have yet quite some to do, and we are working quite hard to make sure that this is done.
One of the issues that has always been picked in our missed targets is that, number one, the cost of energy has always been highlighted by manufacturers as one area that has made Kenya highly uncompetitive. The other thing has always been infrastructure. And of course, we have seen deliberate effort by the government to invest significantly in infrastructure. Would you say that this has laid a solid foundation for Kenya's industrialization agenda?
I would say, if you look a few years back, we didn't have even enough energy for our own consumption. Today, we have extra energy with us. We have also entered into other agreements with the manufacturers so that for those that operate at non-peak hours at night, their power is at more competitive rates. If you look at the number of people applying now to come and produce in Kenya, not even for use in Kenya, the list is growing and growing rapidly. The special economic zones that we have and the EPZs that are there, the numbers of people coming in from textile to other areas are increasing by the day. This is because the environment that has been set by these additions are actually beginning to bear fruit. I'll give you an example. If you look at the value of the SGR, initially it didn't look that active, but now with the ability to get your goods delivered directly to Nairobi, or very soon to be delivered to Naivasha, and eventually to Kisumu, this makes a lot of difference. You've seen an interlink between the old standard gauge railway, the SGR, and the meter gauge railway. There are links coming up now, allowing the network to grow even wider in terms of service. When you look at the road network that has been developed in this country, anybody who left this country before 2010, coming today, will actually be surprised at the extent. I have lived abroad as a foreign service officer for a very, very long time, over 2 decades. And to tell you the truth, every time I came back home, one of the first things that shocked me or surprised me was, wow, when was this done? And this is almost entirely infrastructure. What is the relationship between that and the manufacturing base? For us to be able to grow the industrial base, you must establish a network through which the products that are produced in these factories can reach the market. So infrastructure and that road network, railway network, reliable air transport are all very, very important to manufacturing. Secondly, when you have an environment of peace as we have in Kenya today, that is another addition. And when you look at the advantage that we have in terms of access to the sea, it gives us yet another additional advantage to being a very attractive manufacturing base. So to me, I think we have what it takes. We have the opportunity now, and the kind of policies that are being developed serve very well to get us to attain the Vision 2030.
In 2017, when President Uhuru Kenyatta unveiled the Big Four agenda, and one of it is on manufacturing, he was very clear that the whole point is to try and jumpstart the contribution of manufacturing to GDP from, say, about 9% to around 15% by the year 2020. We definitely know that we have missed this. We're still stagnant at about 10%. And when you look at the industrialization roadmap, it talks about also improving these from 9% to around 15% by the year 2022. When you look at the challenges that has been brought about by the coronavirus, can we say that we are confident enough to get to 15% contribution in about 2 years' time from now?
The belief is we are still on course to attain the 15%. If we miss 15%, I will be surprised, because one of the things that we have embarked on is development of agro-processing, development of small to medium-sized enterprises across sectors. Also, establishing devolution has become a great advantage to this, because then a lot of the industrial base, especially small to medium size, have moved out of the capital. If you go to many of the county headquarters, you'll find a lot of production, for example, even from bakeries to small to medium-sized cottage factories. They have all set up there. If you look at the agenda support, take housing and manufacturing and how they support each other. One of the fastest growing areas for us is the construction sector, or the construction industry. This is because the demand for housing has a direct relationship to the drive in manufacturing. If we develop, or if we build about 500,000 apartments, that would mean we need 2 million doors, assuming that each apartment has a minimum of just four doors. You can do the math for the windows, for the locks, and a few other things. The carpenters are also in on the same. So there is a lot of relationship between one aspect of the Big Four and the other. And because of the support that is coming in, the demand that is increased by trying to improve one, then we see growth and getting closer and closer to the promised 15%. Now, what is the main challenge to this? Of course, everyone knows 2020 was a lost year for a lot of people in the world. COVID-19 affected us very negatively. It seems 2021 will be better, but not back to where we would want it to be. So my hope is by development of cottage industry, good infrastructure, support of SMEs, and the right policies to ensure that these entities are given an opportunity to flourish will help us attain the 15% contribution to GDP. And that is what we're working towards up to now.
You know, manufacturers have always called for the development of a fund that they can always tap into, in a bid to expand their operations. There has always been this desire, to merge the Industrial Development Bank with ICDC. And this would have created, a huge funding pool for many companies, especially in distressing times like the one that we are living today. We know this proposal has always been there, within government circles, but it has never been implemented. Is this something that now we need to relocate and try to accelerate?
In fact, thank you for that question. In fact, right now we have a program that is bringing together quite a number of players in that line you've named. ICDC and IDB, these are all coming together to form one big operation. We also have in the State Department here the KIE, Kenya Industrial Estates, and all these work towards support of industry, both in funding and technical capacity. We are working also very closely with the education sector to ensure that we tie a development of skills to the development of industry, because if we're going to succeed in this process of sending to the mashinani, to the counties, more and more production capacity, then we have to have people that have the requisite technical ability to handle this. So to me, I think, yes, we are working towards establishing a support system through a development bank that will be able to come in to aid people during hard times, but even during good times. It's important to ensure that industry has access to easy and affordable competitive credit. If we are able to do that for our mostly medium-sized and smaller industries, we will increase production, increase capacity, and also enable the creation of a lot more jobs than you could imagine. I think today, Kenya, like any other country that's developing, needs to ensure that growth of industry translates directly to growth of jobs. Remember, in Kenya, we are very, very young, 75% under 35. That is a very young country. And that part of our population is still growing. So for us to be able to gainfully accommodate these people, the small to medium-sized sector of our industrial expansion must grow.
I'll be coming back to that issue of, the population dividend. And as you are saying, Kenya is highly favored because it has a young and mobile population. But before we get there, back in the year 2015 when the industrial transformation strategy was launched, there was a strong desire to set up an industrial fund. Where did we get stuck on this? I think it was actually supposed to help SMEs, to access low-priced credit.
Yes, indeed, we have, in the sense that we have KIE and MOSEA, the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, under which an umbrella is being developed to support most of these cottage industries. If you look at under that, we have in every constituency the development of a center where all the support can be provided. Again, trying to work towards a single-stop facility for all business support to small and medium-sized enterprises. If you take, for instance, an area like dairy, if you need any registration, and somebody else is in animal feed production, someone else is in transport, someone, all those are brought together, and there is an establishment of a structure that is able now to give support to this. There is also the cooperative movement, which is again getting a lot of support and strength to try and ensure that this is accomplished. But in the sense of the fund as it is, Musea is working on developing a fund to support that process. But I wouldn't want it to look like we do not have the actual support for SMEs, because that is the largest agenda at my desk right now. If you see what is being developed to ensure that cottage industry has all it requires, not only from government, it's even being done outside of government. 2 weeks ago, I was at a launch with Equity Bank, where we were launching the fund to support SMEs affordably and efficiently. This kind of support is also supported by a credit guarantee program, which makes funding more accessible. Because one of the bigger challenges in supporting or giving credit to SMEs is not the lack of money, it's the cost of money. And a lot of times it had to do with collateral. What do you give? What stands in for this? If I am growing French beans, it is not enough for me to tell a bank, if you give me 500,000 shillings, I'll be able to grow my crop, sell it, and pay you back. But with the credit guarantee program, even commercial banks are now stepping in and saying, yes, we are in a position to support this. So yes, the fund is being developed to become stronger under the micro and small size enterprises, and at the same time we are developing the policy system to ensure that the same is accessed not only from government but also from the participating private sector institutions.
The other issue that has dosed the manufacturing base in this country is that you have a situation whereby imports have grown to about 40% of the country's GDP, whereas when you look at exports, we have stagnated at about 15-16% of our GDP. And this is a bad situation, whereby you're importing more than what you're exporting. How do we plan to balance this and try to even it out?
We're giving a lot of support to Buy Kenya, Build Kenya program. Even in our procurement policy today, there is a higher requirement for us to ensure that we are working with products that are Kenyan. When you look at manufacturers are getting incentives on the basis of local content in their products. So the higher the amount of local content in your production, the better the incentive that you can get from us. At the same time, we are also working to ensure that there is easier and more affordable way of getting the local products to the market, not only in the cities but also in the rural areas. And therefore, there again, you see coming in the value of all this infrastructure, because infrastructure has had a very heavy part of our development in the last 5 years or so. And that is to ensure that then those areas are open to receive, open to give, because you look at agricultural communities in the Rift Valley, in Central, in other parts of the country. Many of them have the right climatic conditions to produce a lot of things that were imported before. But with the infrastructure that we have today, we are able to consume from almost any market anywhere in the country products that are either grown or manufactured or made in Kenya. So that is the direction we are headed.
One of the discussions that is taking place right now is whether as a country we need to rethink on the issue of export compensation scheme. I mean, it had its own challenges back in the 1990s. It was abused. The fact that it was abused doesn't make it bad. It means that probably maybe the structures or the people who are set up to look at the structures, had a problem. But when you look at some countries, you're talking about countries like Singapore, you're looking at countries like South Korea, China, they have some form of export compensation scheme for their local manufacturers whereby you are compensated and encouraged to export more in order for the country to get more FDI. Is this something that we are likely to relook at, going forward?
The incentives that we are giving to our manufacturers and the types of manufacturing that we are licensing is almost equal to that compensation scheme, in the sense that if somebody is setting up at the EPZ or the SEZ, and now we have Naivasha and we have Dongokundu and others are coming up in different parts of the country, the more this develop, the better it will be for our people to produce for export. The incentive scheme or the incentive structure that is developed for this speaks greatly towards that encouragement for the manufacturers to export even more. The kind of agreements that we are also setting up or even having with other countries, Kenya is extremely attractive to a lot of this. If you go to Europe, we are working with the EU. We have the trade agreement with the EU. We have a trade agreement with the UK. We now are in the negotiation for a trade agreement with the US and many others. We've had a long-standing relationship with countries like Japan. In fact, Japan just the other day pronounced itself that Kenya is their most important destination now for their industrial development for Africa. And a lot is going on in that space. And I think Kenya is geared or set to really grow. So FDI coming in and us having a sustainable development, sustainable production system, part of the doing or what we're working on right now.
Very well. And the other concern that a lot of investors have raised is the issue of intellectual property and a flow of illicit good and of course also illicit money into the country. When you have a situation whereby 7 out of 10 items being sold in the country counterfeit good, this is not definitely good for a country like us. How do you plan to accelerate efforts towards curbing the spread of or the sale of counterfeit products and of course intellectual property?
You've seen the kind of streamlining that we are now putting at the port, meaning the goods that make it here will have to go through the system. They will have to be analyzed properly before they enter the food chain, so to speak. At the same time, we have expanded our inspection units so that we are able to reach further, quicker, in more efficient way and ensure that whatever is reaching out there to the public is not the counterfeit, but at least standardized goods. We are also making sure that the industry is producing competitively in terms of pricing and in terms of quality, so that it's not only enforced by the agents from government saying this is a bad item, this should not be on the shelf, but also by the market, where the consumer comes and says, I will pick this because it is better quality, higher quality, better priced, and at the end of it all, we are all Kenyans. Build Kenya. Buy Kenya, build Kenya.
Finally, as we come to the end of this interview, how would you assure Kenyans that the dream of making Kenya a newly industrialized nation in about 9 years' time from now is still valid and the government will do all that is within its powers to ensure that this dream is achieved? Industrialization or industrialized country by definition will mean a country that is able to feed its people, is able to educate its people, is able to provide the highest quality of health care, is able to provide the standard of living that is desired by everybody. And there are different ways of judging that. But then looking at also the future and where the world is going in terms of marketability of your products, acceptable consumption by your own people, and at the end of the day, capacity to sustain those industries that continue to produce for this type of lifestyle or this standard of living is really what has been set by the system that we have built the last 5 to 10 years as a country. If you look at areas like ICT, Kenya is cutting edge. We are still amongst the top in the world. When you look at infrastructure here, Kenya is still a very, very competitive destination, be it by air, by sea, or even by road, as is right now. When you look at security, Kenya is a very secure country. By any measure, anywhere, anyone can come and live in this country and live peacefully, safely, to either do their work, do their business, or to come and invest as a manufacturer or in other way. So in another 9 years of continued implementation of our plan, by ensuring that we have put together the right policy, the right access, and the openness that is needed by the rest of the world, Kenya for sure in another 9 years should be amongst the newly industrialized countries in the world. And so it's possible to say that even here in Kenya, it's possible to do it.
And in Kenya, we are also able to do it in 9 years. If they could do it for 40 million in Brazil, we can do it here for 15 million.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador, for joining us here and helping us understand where we are in terms of Kenya's industrialization agenda.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Very well. We've been talking to Ambassador Kireni Kadoria, Principal Secretary in the docket of industrialization, trying to understand where are we exactly in terms of making this country an industrialized nation. You have heard it from him. My name is O'Brien Kim, and you have been watching Inside Government. Thank you for your time. We'll do this again on Thursday. Until then, have a good time. Bye.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Kunataka mahesabu kwa sababu yule lazima ujue wale askari ni wangapi pale ndani ambao wanamlinda.
Sasa unabao ushanka uoga.
Jeshi gani anakuwa namna hiyo?
Kwa nini sasa nadhani sote tunaelewa kilichotuleta.
ታወት ማለት ክብር እዩ ስዕል ኣለዎ እንደገና እዚ ይፅሕፎ እዚ ይልካል ማንም ሰው ይግለጽ ካህን ጥራይ ብቻ ምስጢር ልፈልጦ
The ark, this upgrade, and the idiot
No, not happy. What one finds curious is what the ark is all about.
It's edifying. First of all, it must be yourself.
This is the story of one of the keepers of the ark. By 300 BC, there was already a flourishing African civilization in Ethiopia. The ruler of this kingdom was called Queen Sheba, or